We are honored to welcome Padma Shri Dr. Bharat Gupt, one of the most respected voices in the field of arts. He is the Vice Chairman of the National School of Drama, Executive Trustee of Indira Gandhi National Centre for the Arts, and Ratna Sadasya of the Sangeet Natak Academy. A classicist, theatre theorist, sitar and surbahar player, musicologist, cultural analyst and columnist, Dr. Gupt has made lasting contributions to Indian and global scholarship. His work has reshaped the understanding of ancient Greek and Indian theatre, highlighting their shared foundations. He's also widely recognized as an international authority on the Nāṭyaśāstra. I welcome Dr. Bharat Gupt to this conference. Dr. Gupt is our distinguished speaker for the day. I request our Kulapati, Dr. Nagaraj Paturi Garu, to felicitate Dr. Gupt. Just a token of our appreciation. We are so blessed with your presence, sir. Really honored. Thank you so much, Dr. Paturi. I now invite Dr. Gupt to deliver his distinguished talk on the theme, Departure from Hindu Principles in the 19th Century Renaissance. Bharat ji. May I have your permission to sit? Absolutely, why not? Srinivas Garu, mic. It would be our absolute delight to have you seated so that we can listen to you at length and you can be comfortable too.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. I am deeply honored to be here on this platform. I remember how about 20 years ago, Hari Kiranji was establishing this whole organization which is now internationally a pillar of transmitting the Indian knowledge systems or the Shastras and the various other texts. I did my little bit in trying to establish various chapters in Delhi and Lucknow and here and there. And so it's a great comfort for me to see that this movement is catching up, and it is one of the most seminal efforts in the last 30 years to revive our thought, most essential and most beautiful. Now, having said that, as some words of gratitude to the founder who has done so much, and then so many other very eminent persons like our Paturiji here who have joined him and raised the great edifice. I come to the topic which is that in some ways something went wrong with Hinduism in the 19th century. Now, of course, we all put it this way that it was colonization. And we know all the context and the political setup. But the most essential thing is to pinpoint, locate what exactly went wrong. We know the consequence of it because we are suffering from it. And there was this very learned paper which I just heard, which highlighted the problem in one particular area. The conflict between Bali or blood sacrifice and an opposition to it by sanitizing it. Although the departure to this has been there very early. I mean, even Taittiriya Upanishad has a mantra which mentions that instead of now you give this ball of what is urad dal, or this particular food, and substitute it for the animal, and the mantra describes the whole thing. So anyway, there has been that movement since very ancient times, and so there have been diversities of opinion about ways of practicing the rituals and giving new symbols since time immemorial here. However, the big change that took place in the 19th century, which we all celebrate, and we go on to call it the Indian Renaissance, that it was a great Renaissance, I think lost many things. When we ask some very fundamental questions as to why, after let us say 11 years of rule, the present government, which is supposed to be a very aggressively watching the Hindu interest sort of a government, why is it not able to take the temples out of the government control and give it to the people? When we look at very simple problems, that we have a whole concept of secularism which has now been constitutionalized. And the constitution, is entirely a mishmash of some European constitution. It is very far removed from the Shruti Smriti tradition. And the constitutions which really governed India for almost known 3,000 years at least, since the Smritis were composed, or even before that the Griha Sutras were formulated. Now all those concepts of life, or all those aims of life, have been totally disregarded in the present constitution. And we still swear by the present constitution. I'll give you a simple example, like the pursuit of happiness is taken out of the American constitution and put into the Indian constitution. Now, no Indian constitution can have pursuit of happiness as a supreme goal. It can only have pursuit of dharma as a supreme goal, or as the right goal, or the Varnashram dharma, or the Chaturashram dharma. So the whole idea has been so radically altered. Why? Now there are many aspects of it. I am going to talk about something which to my mind has been very crucial. And it was really the dichotomy which was highly promoted in the 19th century. The dichotomy between worship in form and worship of the divine without form. Saguna and Nirguna. To use our traditional terms, our terms from our own texts and philosophic vocabulary, it would be Saguna worship and it would be Nirguna worship. Now you know that these two traditions have always existed. And there are people who have either jokingly or as a matter of their doctrine done severe criticism or ninda of the other camp. Like Kabir saying, Pahana pujay prabhu milay, to me puju pahad. If by worshipping a stone you can reach God, then I will worship a mountain. And there are many verses like that. And he was, as you all know, a proponent of the yogic marga, in which he said, Santo sahaja samadhi bhali, that the ultimate way is that of the samadhi. However, in this Saguna and Nirguna division, which became more pronounced in the Bhakti period, but was not so pronounced earlier, this division comes to a severe imbalance in the 19th century. The imbalance was created by a notion that the Saguna is something inferior. You see, for Kabir it is something not to be followed. And there is a method of stating things in the Indian system in which you can say, when you make something prominent, then you always say that nothing like this exists, it is unique. Like Krishna saying, Sarva Dharman Parityajya, Mam Ekam Sharanam Bhaj. Now when he says Mam Ekam Sharanam Bhaj, he doesn't mean Mam Eva, not nobody else. You see, it is not the Allah formula, La ilaha, it's not that formula. When you say that concentrate on me, that means because now for the time being you are my bhakta, so do not pay attention to others. That does not mean that attentions don't exist or they are inferior. And then there are plenty of verses right from ancient times to show that all forms are one, etc., etc. Now in the 19th century, what happens is that all kinds of Saguna worship tends to be put down by the new intellectual class and the revivalist Hinduism. So, you have Swami Dayananda Saraswati, the Arya Samaj, you have Deva Samaj, you have Brahmo Samaj, and you have so many other smaller movements which very specifically make it clear that murti is either to be avoided, or if it is to be entertained, or if you are going to worship murti, then it is only a stopover. It is people with inferior intelligence who worship the divine as sakar or in form. Now this is a stark departure from the classical approach in which the creator and creation are not two. You see, creation is part of creator. It is part of what the creator is, what has been created. And that is why the Saguna is something which exists as avatarit or incarnate. The whole concept of incarnation means that that which is formless becomes form. But that's why it is not a false form or a stopover. Otherwise the whole concept of avatarvad would fail. Unless you believe that creation, the material, the world, the sansar is part of the whole, it is because Brahmavakya says, Sarvamidam khalu Brahma, Tattvamasi. So if Sarvamidam khalu Brahma is, then this table, this book, this mic is also Brahma. It is a manifestation, it is not unconnected, it is not inferior, only it appears to be different, but it is that. So, as long as you believe in the classical Vedantic doctrine of Sarvamidam Khalu Brahma, then you have the possibility of avatar. That is why it is only in the history of Indian thought that you have a full-fledged concept of avatar. That God incarnates, not just as the only begotten Son, but God incarnates in the womb. Now, and is then connected to the mother, his mother of incarnation, the Devaki or Kaushalya. Although he makes it clear to her that I am not just your son, but then she knows that even though he is not just my son, yet he is my son. Now, when you have that kind of a vision, then only you can have art. Then only you can have form, which is beautiful. Then only you can look upon your own child as divine. You know that famous Purandar Das, Jagato Dharana Adisitalaya Soda. How else can you compose that? You cannot. You cannot think that he that is Brahma, he that is supreme, he that is undivided, this, is playing in the lap of Yasoda. Now, this is said in 1,000 poems and paintings and sculptures and whatnot till the 19th century. Those who worshipped the Saguna were very clear. Saguna upasak moksha na lahai. Those who worship the divine as Saguna, they don't want moksha or freedom from the cycle of birth, death and rebirth. Why? Because it is only when you are born in this world that you can worship the divine. Otherwise, there is no question. And if you are born as a human, and if you are born as a human, then you can worship Saguna, and you find that to be the end and the state of being which is higher than moksha. Therefore, you do not want moksha or freedom. So the Saguna worship, and of course it is related to the Dvaita concept of Vedanta as well, yet it was an accepted reality in the intellectual landscape of India. In the 19th century, something seriously goes wrong here. Swami Dayananda Saraswati, when he translated the Vedas, and you can go and read any of his translations or translations by his successor disciples, every god in Hindi, like if he has to say Agnimede Purohitam, then Agni will be translated as Parampita Parmeshwar. Where does Parampita Parmeshwar come from? Parampita Parmeshwar is, O Patros, the Father. The Father. So if Indra is translated as the Father, if Saraswati is translated as the father, as intelligence, if Pushad is translated as father, if Indra is translated as father, then what do you have? You have a complete, what shall I use the word, Nirgunization. Nirgunization of the Vedic Devatas. All Vedic Devatas are Saguna. They are Saguna. They may not be Sakar in the sense of having the material earth or the five elements, but they are Saguna because they are described as having qualities which are the same as of humans. And that is the reason why they are offered the oblation. Otherwise they would not need any oblation if they would not be Sakar. Now, this is just one example, and this is not to discount or underestimate the great social transformation that Adar and Saraswati inspired in the area of women education and all that. But this great divide comes in. And to this day, a very, very staunch Arya Samaji is dedicated to a total castigation of Murti Puja. Arya Samaj today is not interested, at least not in the north. I don't know, sir, Paturi sir, I don't know what is the situation in Karnataka and other, but they look upon the Rig Veda only as a text. And they do the mantra only as much an ahuti is to be given. They never expanded the yajna in its full beauty, where you would have the ritvik, where you would have the going around the fire, where you would have the 8 kind of ritviks offering Subramanyam and Brahma and all these, giving different rituals and fires and making different kinds of altars, Dakshinagni and the main Brahmagni, etc. All that was never looked upon. We only looked upon the Rig Veda as a text which talks about certain things. And the result was that Rig Veda became a historical text and a site to contest whether there was an Aryan invasion or not. What is the history in Rig Veda? But Rig Veda as a mantra, Rig Veda as part of yajan, as yagya, was totally lost. Now this loss of the concept of yagya as to what really is yagya transformed the Indian society, because the model of the yagya was also the model of the economy. Not just in the Vedic times, but in till very recent times, till the approach of the industrialization. Because a grihastha was known as somebody who is doing a constant duty as a yajna, and therefore he as a yajman has so many other persons to feed. Just as in a yajna, I give all kind of dakshina, not just to the ritvik or the priest, but everybody. Right from the one who picks up the flowers or makes the altar or gives me somalata. I mean, it was the whole concept of the grihastha giving to others. So you give to the brahmachari, the one who is in the brahmachari ashram, you give it to the vanaprastha, the one who is in the vanaprastha, and you give it to the sannyasi. The whole economic system of Chaturashram, where the earner was only the grihastha and the rest were dependent on him, was the model of the yajna. And when this model was lost, then you have an entirely different economy. Today you pay for your education. Today you pay for your old folks' home. And there is no concept of sannyas. The modern concept of sannyas is that I have sufficient money so that I can go to a beach and lie there, enjoy the sun, preferably outside India, and just lie around. As D.H. Lawrence said, lie around like a lot of India rubber. Now, this whole process begins in the 19th century as a result of this radical divide. And this radical divide, once this happens, it cuts us off from the whole Shruti Smriti tradition. When I say Shruti Smriti tradition, the Shruti Smriti tradition was based upon social responsibility in terms of worship, in which essential ritual was the crux of Hindu way of life. You see, no matter how much you want to elevate Upanishads, and there was an unhealthy concentration on the elevation of Upanishads from 19th century onwards. The Upanishads, or the text of the Brahma Gyan, they are the texts of Vanaprastha and Sannyas, not of Grahastha. So when you elevate them, and when you elevate the system of yoga or going within, and you give up the whole concept of performing ritual, manasa, vacha, karamana, all kinds of ritual, then you lose certain fundamental structures of Indian cultural practices, aesthetic practices, educational practices, and economic practices. The whole culture undergoes a transformation, and it becomes a sitting duck for Western sociology and Western anthropology. You see, the Christians castigated ritual, Hindu ritual, more than anything else. Because they said this is fraud. The Marxists do the same. The Arya Samaji do the same. In this Kumbh, one of the most virulent Arya Samaji Swamis, I forget his name, somebody, I saw various videos of his. He was sitting there and preaching that Kumbh is Pakhand, because Murti Puja is Pakhand. The whole concept of Amrit Kalash and Amrit Manthan, all this is nonsense. So when you come up with the so-called logic or positivistic logic, and when you say that a text which is imbued with many kinds of meaning is something you can't understand. You know, there was a controversy about this line of Hanuman Chalisa, Bala Samay Ravi Bhakshaliyo. So some Arya Samajis made a lot of halla, and they said, how could a child go and swallow the sun? This is irrational, and therefore this is stupid Hinduism. Now, this kind of reformist Hinduism is still going on very strong. And there was very severe criticism of the ritual of Kanyadan in Hindu marriage. Now, when the Hindu, modern Hindu, is alienated from ritual, then what he does, he bowdlerizes his own ritual. He makes the whole ritual very shabby, very commercial. He loses the seriousness of it. And this is the greatest danger that is happening to the Hindu tirthas now. They are becoming tourist centers. The governments are interested in promoting tourism and promoting economy through tourism, which is the exact opposite of the Vedic vision or the vision of Yajna or the vision of the balance between Saguna and Nirguna. Because you can't have a society of yogis. समाज योगियों से नहीं चल सकता, वो गृहस्थ से चलेगा, वो चतुराश्रम से चलेगा, केवल संन्यास से नहीं चलेगा. And grihastha ashram is the highest of ashram. Mahabharata says so. In the very first chapter, Sambhav Parva of Mahabharata, it is clearly stated that is where they start talking about the lineage. So, this problem begins in the 19th century under Christian influence. See, it did not take place under 800 years of Islamic rule. From the Islamic mullahs, maulanas, theologians, kings, whatever, we did not absorb this idea that supreme being can be worshipped and is best worshipped in the Nirguna method. Although there were, certain crossroads, I don't want to go into that. But no Hindu stopped doing his ritual. In the 19th century, this process begins. And when you have the great leaders of Indian Renaissance and the followers, all of them are anti-ritualistic, including the great Shri Aurobindo. Including the great Shri Aurobindo, much as I am a devotee of Shri Aurobindo. But that is a fact. And by 1920, we had the ultimate stroke. What you call in French, coup de grâce, the guillotine, Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi never worshipped inside a temple. His sole interest regarding the temples was that an achut or an untouchable should be taken into the temple. So, the Hindu temple for Gandhi was a site of social reform, not a place of worship. I am saying this on record. I've said this earlier. I said this for the first time in Truman University in 1996. I think we somehow have to see the big mistake that we made because it threatens our arts. It threatens our sciences. Because if you think that this material world is not a serious pursuit, that it is not as valuable as the ultimate, then culturally, politically, also militarily, you tend to lose. Thank you so much. I welcome questions.
Yes, Bharatji, I have been invited to participate in Amritsar in a celebration for the centenary or bicentenary or something of Swami Dayanand Saraswati. and I vaguely know what I'm going to say, but you certainly sharpen certain things. Is there anything that you think I could usefully tell these Dayananda worshippers?
I can talk about a couple things, how Dayanand ji, great as he uh, was culturally not a uniter. I don't know if you would like to say this, but he has said very shabby things about Guru Nanak. He has accused him of being an illiterate because he didn't know Sanskrit. And he said, why on earth has he written Ikonkar and Nirbhav? Nirbhav is, Nirbhay. So why did he not write Nirbhay, which is correct Sanskrit? And he has said terrible things about Guru Nanak. And I think the Arya Samajis misused all that, refueled it, his Satyarth Prakash, to create the divide between traditional Sikhism and Arya Samaj in Punjab. There's a very bad history of it. So, this is the story of so many of our great reformers, including Ambedkar, that we look upon them from purely political eyes. But in a hall like this, we are all here just examining. Our dharma is anivikshiki, or looking, analysis. Another thing about I'm talking only from his text, not what his followers said. He said that don't read Kalidas because Kalidas has written very erotic verses. And erotic verses should not be read, especially by students who are studying Sanskrit. You see, this is a fact. Although I have known very good dancers who are Arya Samajis, especially from Gujarat. One of them used to be my very great friend. But then that is something different. Because you love dance, you may be from an Arya Samaji family, but you don't care what Swami Dayananda Saraswati wrote. But there was a very big reservation from the arts, from Shringara, in the whole Arya Samaji camp. This is something this is a prejudice which you find to this day. Just as Gandhi was opposed to Khajuraho and he was horrified by it. Both Nehru and Gandhi were horrified by Hindu temples. It's a very serious matter. You have to investigate it deeply. How is it that a romantic poet like John Keats is fascinated by a Grecian urn and says truth is beauty and beauty truth? He says the most profound thing that even the Greeks quote him now. But here in India, two great political leaders who shaped the destiny of our continent and our nation in the 20th century, they were horrified of Hindu temples. Why? There's something more serious than just social reform or political choices. It's a way of thinking, and that way of thinking still persists. I have no compunctions in saying that in 14 years the BJP has failed to take any serious cognition of how the temple should be managed because it is full of Gandhiites and Arya Samajis. It's a fact. They don't know even how the temple should be managed. And the Hindu temple was the great successor to the age of Yajna. Out of the age of Yajna came two things: Natya, theatre, and the temple. And the temple was the arena or the stage where theatre was performed. One of the great stages and one of the great preservers of performing arts. The Hindu temple. And the Hindu temple was, like the Greek temples, a great center of economy. The Greeks have written a lot about it, how Delphi contributed to the economy, or how the temple of Dionysos contributed to the economy of Athens, or how the island of Delos was in the Aegean Sea was a great center of commerce. Because the ancient temples, the Greek temples and the Hindu temples were great centers of commerce. Now we want to make them great centers of commerce, but which way? Just to register them in the Guinness Book of Records that so many millions visited in this month. But what did the millions do? They just went there, had a darshan and were pushed out. That is not a temple. So look at the big transformation that India is going through. And it's all connected with, at least to my mind and my analysis. Yeah. So.
Sir, one question.
Yeah, there's another question?
I'll just finish mine.
Please.
Why do you think it was so difficult in that era? In that era, in
19th
the
century?
early part of the 19th century, why responding to this assault from monotheism? Why was it so difficult? Why did the luminaries of that time not duck this question, not even accept this question as a valid question, which should have been the way it should have been?
I understand. The reason is the same as it is today. The reason is the same. A sense of guilt and lack of confidence and absence of the knowledge of who we are. So you can't negotiate with others. So we were traumatized by Islamic rule for such a long time. Our educational institutions had been wiped out. Even in the city, the small little gurukuls or teachers had famished or receded. And therefore, the presence of the colonizer was overpowering. तो जो कुछ उनका है वो बहुत अच्छा लगता है. I mean, the idea that if you are fair then you are more beautiful, this is something which is seen in Indian literature only from 11th century, 12th century. Otherwise all the gods are dark. and nowhere beautiful women are described as fair women, Gaur, in any Kalidas or Bhana Bhatt or anybody. The concept of feminine beauty was more towards the dark then, because there were more dark women as they are today. No. Shyama is so it's entirely that, and unfortunately, unless we come out of it, it will. Yes.
Yes. Namaste, Bharat Gupt. So, I think Shiv Kumarji already asked that question that I wanted to ask, but I think I'll just expand it on a little. I was recently in New York at the New York Society of Vedanta, which was started by Swami Vivekananda ji, and it's surprising how Semiticized it has gotten, because one of the Swami who had come there, he literally said on stage that, body is filthy, material is filthy, you should only reside in the kingdom of Lord, there are other institutions like in Pune, there's Gyan Prabodhini, who's basically become a vehicle for a lot of Protestant framework being applied to the Indian traditions, कि पूजा करते समय ये मत करो, वो मत करो, wastage होता है, वो होता है. So I just want to understand that, I think Shiv Kumarji already asked this, but is this because of lack of Purva Paksha that our ancestors were doing? I'm sure violence played a very big role, but I feel that they're just blindly taking Semitic theology, embroidering it, and just passing it on as Hindu religion.
Yeah. See, first of all, it is, as you indicated, inability to do a criticism of somebody else's articles of faith. That is Christianity itself, I remember long time back, I think when I was a student in an American university in 1969 or so, I was reading a text, somebody, they mentioned it was a portion of history, somebody's house, and there was a plaque on it, and he said, we had a happy this, a great festival, and the savages they attacked on such and such date. So I asked my teacher, sir, who was the savage? The people who had a saying, a dead Indian is the only good Indian. Dead American Indian, the red Indian is a good Indian, is one who is dead. Are those who have a saying called of this sort, are they savage? Or the people who attacked you because you were killing them were savage? So, you see, we have had generations where people were not educated in their own self. I was born 1946, I was educated in 50s and 60s in India. I had read my Hindu texts, my English texts, of course I gave up my PhD very soon and came back to India. Because I thought there was nothing worth doing a PhD at first in America, and then I went to Canada, Toronto also. So I came back. There was nothing to study. And that was before this, theory, critical theory, came in late 90s, 60s. So it's primarily this problem. This can be solved only one way. Familiarize yourself with your own texts, with your own arts. Have a Shraddha for them. Shraddhavana labhate jnanam. So if you have Shraddha in it, you will get what they have to offer. And people have done it. It's so many people in India, you can see they have done it. Sir.
To the question by Shiva and the young man, there is another aspect to this, that if you see the legends about Dayananda, they mention that he defeated in Kashi Vidyapit, and he was given awards, titles and all that. That defeat doesn't happen unless there is a Shastrartha there. They mention Shastrartha. The legends mention a Shastrartha. And in that Shastrartha, because the legend is coming from the Arya Samaji side, it mentions their leader as a victor. But the story from the side of the Purva Paksha that was condemning him, Khandana that was happening, that is not narrated, that is not documented, that doesn't reach you. What they did, what actually happened, whether he was defeated or he won, that story doesn't come to you. And there is another documentation that happens from people like Karapatre Swami. And in the documents from Karapatre Swami, you see a very severe, systematic and very organized khandana of the Purva Paksha by Dayananda Saraswati. You have many other such documents from Bihar, from Uttar Pradesh also, which are now getting published. Those older documents of systematic khandana that was done by one Vishnu Dharmonkarji and others, they are all now getting published. They are on the internet now. How Dayananda's arguments were countered by others is all there. Why it did not reach you, me, is because of the
No, they were not published. They are now being published.
They are now being published, and your curriculum represents only the pro-reformation side of the story, so it did not reach you. Now it is time for us to bring out what happened on the other side of the story also.
It is one of the accounts, sir. I read the Shastrarth in Kashi. One of the counter account says that Dayanand left in a huff. They say he left in a huff after 2 hours because they kept on asking him that how is it that you will not take into account the successive texts which call themselves as part of Veda Parampara. You see, according to Harvard and Columbia, Veda or Vedic means only the Samhita. But according to the Indian tradition, Nāṭyaśāstra is Pancham Ved, Mahabharata is Pancham Ved, it is full of Puranas, stories, all this is Veda. And it is all called Veda Mata. There is a poet 100 years after Tulsi, I forget his name, he says, Veda Mata Sodhi ke Purana Mati. Santan or Santana ko bhed ko batavato. Who would have told us who is a sant and who is not a sant? And he, that is Tulsi, had explored the Veda Mata, not just the Samhitas, but the Veda Mata. Jopaya Ramayana Tulsi Nagavato, that is the last line. If Tulsi had not sung the Ramayana, then we would not have known the Veda Mata. So Veda in the tradition is not just Samhita. It's only Michael Witzel and Dayanand Swami who think that Veda is it's Samhita. Yes, please.
Namaste, sir. Sir, as you were talking about Arya Samaj and other movements that have tried to, talk with a sanctimonious tone through Hinduism, so I think the Indian state also favored, for example, Arya Samaj has their schools, colleges through, Article 26. Other monotheistic religions or panths have Article 30 rights, but a Sanatana Dharma Hinduism has been left stateless. I mean, they don't have their own schools, they can't propagate their ideas through schools, colleges, they have to be secular compulsorily. So here, how does the state need to react to these challenges? Because, and another point that goes in favor of the so-called people from monistic pantheons, even within the Hindu domain, is that, they argue that there is no concept of Shuddhi or reconversion in Hinduism from in a traditional perspective, but we are doing Shuddhi of people. We are bringing back people from other religions. So we are superior to what you think Hinduism is. How do we counter that, sir?
Well, first of all, give the historical truth that Hinduism, broadly speaking Hinduism, has been converting people who were non-Hindus. Buddhism was converting so many people. Buddhism is 98% Hinduism. It's only in recent times that it is considered as something non-Hindu. Otherwise, till 11th, 12th century, Nirvana or Buddha or moksha, they were considered as almost synonymous in terms that they provided freedom or liberation. And look at the extent to which the Bauddha bhikshus went right up to Japan and Vietnam and all that. So was that not conversion or into the Western side? So first of all, you have to historically say that we have been converting, and by God we are going to convert again. Make no mistake. One. Number two, in order to be that confident, you have to be clear about the huge, multiple, and the strong variety of Indian doctrines. That you offer all kinds of philosophy, all aspects of philosophy, which is very different from the Christian and the Islamic doctrine. Because the Quran and the Bible are not philosophical. See? And in the 21st century, I think even an 8th class boy or girl would like to think, would like to consider things philosophically. In India, religion is not the cornerstone of spiritual search. Inquiry, philosophy, darshana is. You are asked to examine. You are asked to experience yourself. Unless you experience, and the whole concept is that there are various levels of experience according to your avastha or ability to know and perceive things. So we have to emphasize that more than anything else, because that is intrinsic to the human condition, which is beyond just territorial or historical or geographic boundaries. It's a very strong argument in favor of Hindu thought, broadly speaking, Hindu thought, Indian thought, Indic thought, or whatever. That come on, let's think, let's argue, let's discuss, and let's arrive at a conclusion, and let me see what you see, and you show me what you have seen. This is the way. And from that follows ethics, from that follows social norms, economics, economy.
Namaste Mahodaya. So my question is, आज के समय में जो होता है कि शास्त्र कोई भी पढ़ लेता है, चाहे वो आधुनिक सोच वाला व्यक्ति हो या पारंपरिक सोच वाला व्यक्ति हो, तो वो कुछ ऐसे तथ्यों से उसका सामना होता है जो उसकी सोच के अनुकूल नहीं होते। जैसे कि कोई हो गया जो आजकल की जो है मोरालिटी के अनुसार रहता है, उसको ट्रेडिशनल मोरालिटी उसको पचेगी नहीं, और ऐसे ही वो ट्रेडिशनल मोरालिटी वाला अपने शास्त्रों में, अपने काव्यों में कुछ ऐसा पा लेता है जो उसकी जो है सभ्यता का जो भी उसका जो है उसके विचारधारा है उसके अनुकूल नहीं होगा। तो उसके लिए वो कैसे प्रयास करे कि इसको अपने
उसको कैसे रिजॉल्व करें।
हाँ, और एक और ये है कि ये इसी के साथ साथ हमारी कला में भी हम कह सकते हैं कि आज के जैसे हिंदू सोच के अनुकूल जितने हमारे हुए आर्टिस्ट, वो एक ही प्रकार का सोच के आ सकते हैं कि हमें जो है कि दिखाना है कि हम पे अत्याचार हुआ है और ये सब हुआ है, और या फिर ये होगा या फिर होगा कि परंपरा को थोड़ा जो है कूटना है, किसी का ये होता है, किसी का परंपरा को उठाना है, हम उसकी एक वैसी ट्रीटमेंट नहीं दे सकते।
समझ गए। आपके दो प्रश्न हैं। हाँ। एक तो जो हिंदू रिवाइवल में लोग लगे हैं वो कहते हैं हमें परंपरावादी बनना है, और दूसरा कि कैसे अलग अलग शास्त्रों में या टेक्स्ट में कॉन्ट्रडिक्शन है तो उसको कैसे रिजॉल्व करना है। बैठिए, देखिए, दिस इज एन एज ओल्ड प्रॉब्लम, नथिंग न्यू। Whenever you go to a tradition which is not expounding a doctrine, but which is examining things, you will see that very opposite things are also quoted, given, and talked about. Whenever you go to texts which have grown over 1,000 or a 500 or a 1500 year period, you would find things which were practiced at one time and not practiced later time. महाभारत में नियोग होता था, पांडव नियोग से पैदा हुए, उसके बाद में 1000 साल बाद कलियुग में वर्ज हो गया. मनुस्मृति में दोनों हैं, आपस्तंभ सूत्र इत्यादि, they mention both. Now you have to study the classical texts in a broader perspective, seeing their historical growth, and then you have to see the unity of purpose. Secondly, what is very often used in classical texts of all kinds are certain literary devices. Atishayokti. You don't mean it, but you say it in a language which is hyperbolic. जैसे गौतम स्मृति में लिखा है कि अगर वेद कान में पड़ गया तो सीसा डाल दो. Now, unless you put that in a particular context of why this was forbidden, you will not make. And in the Indian logic, there have been systems of making sense out of a given sentence, what is called arthavad. How arthavad operates. A sentence at places may mean literally what it is true. जैसे जल बहता है तो जल बहता है, वह मैं अपना दिल निकाल के दे दूंगा. Now this is not to be taken literally. मैं अपना दिल निकाल कर दे दूंगा. So this arthavad will be different. It will be called gunavad, or that is, you look upon that specific characteristic or guna to make sense. मैं अपना दिल निकाल के दे दूंगा मतलब I will express my emotion. This is how you make sense. Or yatharthavad, which I gave an example. So you have to look upon the text in literary terms, in terms of various figures of speech that are used, and the context of the whole text. अब आप उसको कहीं से एक ले लें और एलिवेट कर दें तो वो दूसरों के साथ बैलेंस नहीं होगा, whether it is for good or for bad. So you have to do a systematic study. The Christians do a wonderful job, of how to teach the Bible and how to make meaning out of it. उनकी seminaries चलती हैं, courses चलते हैं. Apologetics, Christian apologetics. So we had we don't call it apologetics, but this is, yes.
I'm really sorry, we don't have time for a Q&A further. So sorry, Bharatji.
No, I'm subject to your discipline.
I am subject to your blessings. If you feel like answering, please. But this would be the last.
Chaliye, bas let this be the last.
My pranams to you, sir, and my pranams to all the Guru Vargas and the distinguished personalities in the hall. You very beautifully delved on the discussion as to how the Nirguna aspect of worship has been in the 19th century greatly celebrated by the purported revivalists. However, in the traditional understanding of the schools of thought in India, we see that the dichotomy of Saguna and Nirguna is not understood as some exclusive, radical, antagonistic schools of thoughts or schools of worship, rather as two parallel running with intersectionalities amongst them, where the same preceptor will be imparting Nirguna worship or yoga worship to a disciple like Kabir, and to others like Sureshwarananda and Tulasi, he will be imparting the pivot of personalized worship. Sir, this same approach has been highly borrowed in the study of Indian literature and the study of Indian philosophy as taught in the academic institutions. How can we undo this damage? is my question.
Excuse me. You see, it is, as I said, by looking at the wholeness of the tradition, not just part of it. And also by, thank you, and also by making meaning within the context and within a discipline. See, today, where we are just scrambling for information and revival, then we pick up a Ayurvedic text, we read a line and we say, this is permitted. Meat eating is permitted in Ayurveda. But for whom? It is pathe or food for a particular kind of cure. So you can't use that as an argument against proponents of vegetarianism. Similarly, for the king in Manusmriti, dance and music is prohibited. When? When he is addicted to it, then it is prohibited. You read the context. You see, it is given there that there are 10 heads, Dashvid Gunaha, which are prohibited. But that is when he is to be the king who is governing. But when he is to be the patron, then he has to patronize the arts also. In a civilization which was so rich, which was so varied, which produced so many wonderful texts of each and every discipline, as Shri Aurobindo has mentioned in one of his essays, there is a Shastra for the smallest thing, smallest aspect of life in India, from horse breeding to mating the dogs, etc. There is a Shastra for everything. So you have to see things in their rightful discipline, how they are to be used, how they are to be applied. Now that kind of a holistic knowledge requires a lot of study, and it requires long discipline and building up institutions. See, what we have not started doing in independent India, we have not started making great institutions for different disciplines, for different sciences, for different arts, for different forms of medicine. Institution संस्थान बनाने में हम बहुत पिछड़े हुए हैं और अभी और पिछड़ गए हैं पिछले 15 साल में. We have not made institutions. And it is making institutions which is going to produce Vidwans. Nobody else. We talk a lot about Guru Shishya Parampara and all that, but that is romantic. I must thank you all. I think Dolly is quite clear that we have to conclude for the evening.
We can continue if you have the time, Bharatji.
No. Look, it's not a matter of my time. It's a matter of the propriety of your.
They are young researchers, very hopeful of presenting, so that's why we just wanted to hear.
Yeah. So thank you.
So
Thank
much,
you.
Bharatji. As always, we are so grateful to you for your presence. And as he mentioned, Bharat ji के साथ हमारा इंडिका का संबंध बहुत ही पुराना है और he's been encouraging, patronizing, guiding us. He's like a family only.
Of course.
So grateful to you, sir. आइए ना. Thank you so much, Bharat ji. Once again, we are so privileged to have you amongst our midst.